July 12, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using the NinjaTrader 8 platform. You can look at the descriptions below to see where I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. Where I took my trades on the chart are these boxed ones, and where I saw setups, not necessarily good setups, but just something I recognized and I thought about, are written and designated here. So this is actually the pre-market low and the pre-market high, and it's encapsulated by this gray horizontal range. But as you can see, prices really didn't play too much in this bottom range. It was mostly a bullish bias. And I did see a support on this blue line that I drew here. So I guess you could argue maybe from this blue line to about maybe here was a potential range, or maybe to the top. But the range itself wasn't very clean. There was only economic data that came out around 5:30 Pacific Standard, which is right about here. And as you can see, the market was already rallying. And then when the market received the CPI and the core CPI numbers, it kind of rocket shipped up. And then it did pull back and then went up again. And then it opened onto regular trading hours, kind of horizontal. So there's a consolidation here. And then it looked like it kind of moved slowly in a grind up, but it wasn't a really clean channel that I could find. So it kind of was respecting this lower resistance, but didn't really touch the top one more than twice. So it really wasn't a clean channel. It did kind of have this smaller resistance up here, but it created more of a wedge than a channel. Then it kind of sold off, came back, found this support right here around 40, I would say about 44.98 to 4,500. And overall, it was a pretty interesting trading day. There were a few setups, but I only managed to take one. So I'm going to try to go through this rather quickly and hopefully not have the video drag too long. So in the pre-market, I didn't really see anything, and even though this was potentially the highs and lows, I didn't really see it as a range so much as maybe a bullish trend up. And I did see this potential channel going up. There's a, I guess, channel, it's kind of a spike consolidation and a slow gradual grind up. Well, actually, the first setup that I saw was a new high formed here, made a first entry long, pulls back, and made a second entry long as soon as it broke above here. Now, this is a pretty decent signal bar. However, this is the top of the larger pre-market range. So like this is the pre-market range right here. Let me zoom out a little bit. There's a pre-market top of the range, and you can see this is where it sets up. And also I saw a smaller trading range here, and it's also at the top. So even though this is second entry long, to take a long here, it felt kind of dicey because you'd be buying at the top and you're not really sure it's going to go up even higher. So I left this one alone. Even though it is a good signal bar, there's not enough room to scalp out to the highs. Then prices continue shooting down. I saw this as a potential fail breakout of this trading range, but I didn't, other than a failed breakout, I didn't really see anything as a particularly good setup. Prices then kind of move up in this channel. So it broke out, overshot here, and I was thinking it's come out to the other side here and maybe break down, but it didn't. It just kind of kept going. This is where the blue line comes into play. It's not really part of a channel so much as it was a resistance that was respected all the way up. And through this is all just chop. Certainly there are second entries, or you could argue for second entries longs and shorts, but it was so tightly congested that they didn't really set up a nice high probability setup, in my opinion, at least none that I could recognize. Then you do get to here, which was a new high here. You get a first entry long, and then there's a second entry long. The second entry long, this is technically the signal bar, even though it makes a micro double top, but it's unclear since the EMA is right above it, which is right here. So going long here, potentially you might hit that as a resistance. Now, also at this point, this bottom line has been confirmed about 3 times, so this is a fourth touch. The thing that was, excuse me, the thing that gave me pause right here is this is a signal bar. It's not very bullish, so it is testing. It didn't break one tick above, so at this point you're not really sure what's going to happen, and you're seeing this in real time. So you see something like this, And I'm indecisive about whether this is good enough to go long or if there's a price coming down now. So when this candle forms, now definitely the trade feels like it was too late, even though, it did touch, technically a third time, but you could argue maybe for a fourth time. So I said I should wait for a higher low confirmation. This higher low shows up right here. Actually, I'm not sure why this candle doesn't look as clean. I did do a reload on NinjaTrader, and this actually was a higher low because I'm not sure why this candle kind of looks like this. I'm going to try to reload the data right now and see if it cleans itself up. I've reloaded the data, but in real time, I'm not 100% sure why this looks like this now, but this was a higher low confirmation that I had, and it actually was a pretty decent candle. So this is actually where I took my first trade. It was a higher low of the second entry long. So I think there should have been, this candle may not have formed quite like this, but it probably a little bit lower. However, at the time I took it, it was a good, in my opinion, a good setup. It was with following a bounce of this third touch, and it formed above the EMA with enough room to scalp to the top. So I took this trade, entered here, and was able to get out. I'm not sure why the candle, actually why my exit isn't showing up here, but you can see my blue entry here, and my exit was about here. The prices continue moving up. This support line is holding, and I do see a failed second entry long because I see a new high here, first entry long. This is right here where you make a second entry long. And so the second entry long fails on this next candle here, and this is failed second entry long. It's a little confused. Something is a little off. It's a little goofy. Per my notes, well, there is a failed second entry long. I'm not sure why this isn't showing up correctly. I apologize. This is a new high, first entry long, second entry long fails. This wasn't a good signal bar for the failure, but it was a failure here. And once it closed, I would be reluctant to take a trade down here because it feels like the move has already been made. And there was two touches previously at the same tick, so I'd be afraid for a bounce. Turns out it would have worked out, would have been enough for a scalp. Prices continue moving down. EMA seems to be holding prices down. Now it has one touch, two touch, three touch. So I did draw this as support, and then I just put this guy at the top, thinking we're falling into a channel. This is a bounce off the outside of the pre-market highs, which was kind of interesting. And I did see a second entry short, a new low here, first entry short, second entry short right here. It's a pretty decent signal bar. And as it comes down, this signal bar was pretty good, but unfortunately this setup formed above the EMA. And it does create a third touch of this top resistance. So I had two conflicting ideas. One was I wasn't sure if this is 1, 2, even though it's above EMA, would it actually fail going up? And I wasn't too keen on it, even though it was a good setup. Decided I need to wait for confirmation. Comes up right here, you get a lower high confirmation. This is actually a pretty decent setup in my opinion. And as this one flashed down, I think had I been more aware, I would have put my entry one tick below this green bar, would have gotten filled, and likely would have gotten me a scalp. This setup here with the lower high, it closed below the EMA, just barely, but it is below the EMA, and it bounced off the confirmed resistance at the top of the channel, right up here with enough room to the bottom. So this is actually a pretty decent setup. Unfortunately, I did not take it. Prices continue moving down. It is hugging the bottom of this resistance. It falls through. So I draw this channel going down now. Continues moving down. Now it actually falls out of this channel and it just kind of stays outside. My drawings are all kind of messed up. This is a first entry short. Come up, you technically have a second entry short here, but it feels like two legs now. I didn't have this trading range drawn yet. Prices kind of continue to move. I'm just watching at this point, not really sure. I do have a new high here, first entry long. I'm seeing a potential second entry long setting up here because I noticed that this blue line is being respected. It looked like it touched once, started here once here, or once here, twice, and this is the third time. So I thought there was a second entry long, and a potential triple test. It has a pretty decent signal bar, had two measured legs down, so it looks like the downtrend might have played out. There's enough room to the EMA right up here. But I just wanted to wait for a confirmation because even though this is potentially a triple test, these two came close together while this one was relying way back here. So I wasn't 100% sure, and I wanted to wait for a confirmation. So I waited, and I get my confirmation here. It makes a micro double bottom, higher low confirmation, and I thought this was self might have been a good trade because it confirms the second entry long, but it's too close of a bar. It's just this is technically the higher low is formed right here, and I wasn't 100% sure, and I was, excuse me, confirmation of the second entry long. It's felt a little bit, my notes said it felt a little bit too bearish to go along and not enough room to the EMA for a safe scalp. So certainly it is close to the EMA. I think when I reloaded the data, I recall that this one was actually looking more bearish, but it actually set up nicer now that I've refreshed the data. So at the time, that was my concern. So I'm not sure why this data restore or the data reload has kind of affected this. But I do see a new second entry short here. So it's a new high, new low here, first entry short, second entry short. This is a good signal bar. It's a possible trade because it made two pushes up, one push up, two push up. The problem with this potentially is this is a third touch of this descending trend line, but it's also near the lows, and this support could come back into play. So even though I thought it might have been a trade, I didn't want to take it. Even though it closed below the EMA, I was just a little bit unsure if there was enough room, and I was thinking I might be selling into the lows. Excuse me, selling into the lows with this potential bounce here since this held support. So I was a little reluctant. Move back. I'm all which way, kind of a little bit messed up here. The prices were hugging this lower area. There's a new low here. It's first entry short, makes a second entry short. The second entry short, it's a good signal bar. Actually, it isn't a good signal bar. Again, the reload affected my review, which is a little strange. I believe this was a lower inverted hammer bearish bar. And at the time, I wrote down the notes that this was a decent signal bar. The setup's above the EMA to go short on a second entry short, and it feels like it might be at the top of this range, which is this blue line here, this blue trading range here, which I suspected was in play at the time. So I didn't take that trade. I saw a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, failed second entry short. It is a good signal bar. I need to go back through my notes. I said it was a good signal bar, but it doesn't look so good right now. But certainly the failure does occur and it breaks above higher. The concern was it's close to the top of this trading range, and I would be buying at the top. And I could see this is just being seen as this move could just be seen one move up. So taking a failed second entry short. Let me go back to my notes. A little bit thrown off right now. My data point and my notes are slightly off. It's a good signal bar. I said it's a good signal bar. It's far from the EMA though. Okay, it's close to the top of the range. That's true. Now we're buying at the top of this trading range. And I guess this could be seen as just part of one leg on a larger time frame. So that's another reason you could be going long, but I have to go double check my notes. However, this was a setup here. Kind of left it alone. Prices continue moving up. It kind of falls into this consolidation. It moves up, and I do see a second entry long here as a new high. First entry long comes up, doesn't break the previous high, and this is where the second entry long is. The second entry long, let's see what my notes are at the time. It's a repeat pattern. Oh yes, I do see this is a repeat pattern of something over here. There's the new high, first entry long, second entry long. And this is also from new high, first entry long, second entry long. But this one wasn't as strong a setup because it didn't have a third touch confirmation, which it does here. So I thought this was a possible trade. with this horizontal support, I guess it could have been a good support here and it's bouncing off again. So there's two key entry points. Unfortunately, it is below the EMA. Had it closed a little bit higher, closer to the EMA, I think I would have been more comfortable taking that trade. Then prices continue chopping up, consolidates, breaks down and below, falls into a second trading range. Again, feel a little disorganized here, but there's a new high here. Comes down to the first entry long. Technically, you have a second entry long here. This signal bar isn't very good, but this signal bar here, this trigger bar, does break one tick above it. You do see one leg down. It breaks out of this shortened trend channel and attempts to make a new low, which it does, which is fine. I think this would have been an aggressive trade because it's breaking the test of the low, which has completed. So the downtrend has played out. There could be a symmetric, and I was thinking there could be a symmetric move all the way back up because this was kind of an aggressive fall in about 8 minutes. And so unfortunately, this signal bar wasn't enough for me to feel convinced to take the trade, even though it was a double bottom, double micro bottom. And it was falling close to the support here, which was way back made here. So I wasn't really sure if this, let's see, aggressive entry since the setup doesn't have any other things. Yeah, I felt this was just a little bit in the middle of no man's land, although there was enough room to the EMA. So after that, prices just kind of rallied up, then consolidated and went into the close. So I'm a little thrown off right now because when I did the historical data reload, the chart does look a little bit different than what I had in my notes. When I jotted down that a certain setup had a good candle for bullish or bearish, now it's been reset and doesn't quite look as clean. So that was very interesting, actually. I'll have to take note of that and probably review my charts again after I do a historical reload. So hopefully that was helpful.